Rancher saved a stranger in a blizzard, not knowing she ruled the largest ranch in the territory. The wind screamed across the icy plains of the frontier world of Terrion. Seven, rattling the wooden walls of Jace Thornton's small ranch cabin. Snow swirled like white ghosts, hiding the rolling hills and frozen rivers in a thick, blinding curtain. Jace sat near the fireplace, the dim glow casting long shadows across the room. Outside, the storm had come faster than any weather report could predict. He ran a hand through his tousled hair and squinted at the small window. "This one's nasty," he muttered to himself. He was used to storms. Life on a frontier ranch demanded it. Livestock, ice, and machines were never forgiving, but storms like this were dangerous even for the hardiest ranchers. Jace's gaze drifted to his herd of silver-spine cattle, creatures adapted to the frozen plains. He could see their faint shapes through the icy haze, huddled together trying to shield themselves from the howling wind. One of the calves shivered violently, its tiny body rocking under the snow's bite. "Hang on, little one," Jace whispered. He grabbed his thick coat, boots, and a leather satchel of supplies. The storm was worsening by the minute, and though he had planned to wait it out, instinct told him to check on the herd personally. The wind hit him like a wall as he stepped outside. Snow clawed at his face, stinging like needles. He tightened his scarf and pushed forward, each step sinking into the thick white carpet. His breath came in short bursts, and his eyes watered, but he moved with practiced determination. He knew every ridge, every creek, every shallow ditch in these plains. Survival depended on knowing the land and on trusting your instincts. Then he saw it, a faint movement, barely noticeable, lost among the roaring white. Something, or someone, was struggling against the storm. "Who's out there?" Jace shouted, though he knew the wind would swallow his voice. Squinting, he tried to make sense of the figure. It was human, small, bent against the cold, and clearly fighting to stay on their feet. Instinct and worry pushed Jace forward. He reached them, his boots slipping on ice. The closer he got, the more he realized the person was shivering violently, their face pale and lips blue from the cold. They could not survive much longer exposed to the blizzard. With a grunt, Jace grabbed the stranger under the arms, half dragging, half carrying them back to his cabin. Snow gusted around them like a living thing, but Jace pressed on, muscles straining, every step a battle. At last he reached the warm glow of the cabin and pulled the door open. Inside, he laid the stranger near the fireplace, quickly removing their icy gloves and coat. The stranger was young, strong, and strangely calm despite the ordeal. Their hair was damp and tangled with snow, and their eyes, when they fluttered open, held a sharp intelligence that startled Jace. "You'll be fine now," Jace said, tugging his scarf loose and handing them a thick wool blanket. "You had me worried." The stranger shivered, then smiled faintly. I owe you my life," they whispered. Their voice was soft, yet carried an unexpected authority. Jace shrugged, a little embarrassed. "It's nothing. Out here, we take care of each other." "Name's Jace Thornton. You?" The stranger hesitated. Elara Vey," she said carefully, though she did not meet his gaze directly. "Nice to meet you, Elara," Jace said. He handed her a cup of hot tea, steam curling around the edges. She sipped it, wincing slightly at the heat, then set the cup down. For a few moments they sat in silence, listening to the wind batter the cabin. The storm had turned the outside world into a white blur, a silent and unforgiving wasteland. Jace watched Elara carefully. She seemed to belong out here, yet there was something about her, something that hinted at power, experience, and secrets she wasn't ready to share.
Hmm.
So, what brings you to Tarion 7 in a storm like this? Jace asked, trying to make conversation. Elara smiled faintly. I was traveling. Got caught in the blizzard. That's all. She spoke carefully, each word measured, and yet there was a quiet strength in her tone. Jace nodded. He respected people who survived these plains, but there was something unusual about her. She didn't tremble in fear, didn't panic. Most people would have been lost hours ago. All right, rest up, Jace said finally. The storm should ease by morning, and then you can tell me more, if you want. Alara nodded, lying back on the blanket. She looked around the small cabin, noticing the handcrafted tools, the few simple machines for the cattle, and the stacked firewood. She appreciated the simplicity and efficiency of Jace's home, the way he had adapted to this harsh world. It was clear he knew how to survive and thrive. The night stretched on. Outside, the blizzard continued to rage, but inside, there was warmth and quiet. Jace kept an eye on the fire, glancing at Alara every so often. He wondered who she was and why she was traveling alone in such dangerous conditions. Yet he didn't press. He had learned over the years that people revealed themselves in their own time. Around midnight, a low growl echoed outside. Jace tensed, knowing it was the herd. The storm had them spooked, and something had clearly moved too close to the pens. He rose, grabbing a lantern and stepping out into the cold snow crunching beneath his boots. He saw the cattle huddled together, panicked but safe. One of the older bulls had broken part of the fence, probably trying to get closer to shelter. Jace worked quickly, repairing the broken section while shouting soft, calming words to the herd. They responded to his voice, a bond built over years of trust. Elara watched quietly from the doorway, wrapped in the blanket. "You have a way with them," she said softly. Jace wiped his brow and gave a small smile. "Years of practice. Out here, you learn fast. The animals and the land are your best friends. They won't forgive mistakes." She nodded, her eyes thoughtful. "I can see that. It takes skill, patience, and respect." Jace raised an eyebrow. "You speak like someone who knows more than they let on." Elara smiled faintly, a spark of amusement in her eyes. "Maybe I do. Maybe I don't." The rest of the night passed slowly. The storm raged, but the cabin stayed warm. Jace checked on Alara, made sure the fire never went out, and listened to the wind howling across the plains. Somewhere out there, under the ice and snow, the frontier waited, harsh, beautiful, and unforgiving. By dawn, the blizzard began to ease. The sun barely broke through thick clouds, casting pale light across the frozen landscape. The plains were silent, save for the crunch of snow underfoot. Jace stepped outside, assessing the damage to the ranch. Some fencing was broken, a few cattle strayed, but nothing he couldn't handle. Elara appeared behind him, stretching and blinking against the bright snow. She seemed alert, ready, capable. "You saved me," she said quietly. "I don't forget things like that." Jace shrugged, brushing snow off his coat. "Out here, we don't need thanks." "You survive. That's enough." Elara's eyes lingered on him, a hint of admiration in her gaze. "I can tell. You're good at what you do, and not just with animals." Jace frowned. "What do you mean?" She smiled faintly, mysterious.
You see.
Jace shook his head, laughing softly. "Stranger, you're full of secrets. But I like that. Just don't freeze next time. You might need me again." Alara laughed, a sound soft and musical, blending with the whispering wind. For the first time, Jace felt, curious. Who was this woman who could survive a blizzard like that, who spoke like she knew more about the land and its dangers than he did? He didn't know then that this stranger would change his life forever, that she was more than she seemed, a woman of power, intelligence, and influence. That the simple act of saving her in a blizzard would set in motion events larger than any storm he had ever faced. But for now, the sun rose weakly over the icy plains, illuminating a small cabin, a recovering stranger, and a rugged rancher who had no idea that his quiet life was about to collide with something much bigger. Jace watched the horizon, his breath misting in the cold air. Life on the frontier was never easy, but sometimes it could be extraordinary. And this was one of those times. The morning sun struggled to shine through the thick clouds of Terrion. 7. The plains were still white with snow, and the wind had softened to a whisper. Jace Thornton stepped outside his cabin, boots crunching over the icy ground. He checked the pens and counted the cattle. Only one calf had wandered a little too far, but it was safe. "Elara," he called, his voice carrying across the snow. "You ready to see the herd?" She stepped outside, wrapping the blanket tightly around her shoulders. Her hair was damp but dry enough now, and she moved with surprising ease across the frozen ground. Her eyes scanned the ranch like someone who had seen lands far wider and more dangerous than this. "I can manage," she said, smiling faintly. "I think I can help you with the herd." Jace raised an eyebrow. "Really? You've worked with animals before?" Elara laughed softly. "Yes, but I'm more used to large-scale operations. Still, I think I can handle your little herd." Jace smirked. "Little herd? They're my life out here. Everyone counts." They moved together toward the pens. The snow reflected the pale light, and the air was sharp with cold. Jace noticed how quickly Elara adapted. She moved with purpose, careful but confident, her eyes noticing things he might have missed: the weaker cattle, the ice under their hooves, the gaps in the fencing. "You've got a good eye," Jace said, impressed. "Most people wouldn't notice that bull is limping slightly." Elara knelt, inspecting the animal. "Yes, he's hurt, but not badly. A few days of rest and he'll be fine. You handle them well, with patience, not force." "That's smart." Jace felt a spark of respect. Most strangers would struggle with even feeding the herd in winter conditions. Elara handled it as if she had done it all her life. They spent hours walking the pens, checking the animals and repairing the snow-damaged fences. Jace explained the routines: how to feed the silver-spined cattle, how to lead them safely across icy streams, how to watch for predators in the hills. Elara listened carefully, occasionally asking questions, occasionally giving advice that was surprisingly accurate. "You've adapted well to this harsh land," she said at one point. "Most people your age would struggle." Jace shrugged. "You survive or you don't. No middle ground." "What about you?"
Where are you from?
Elara hesitated. She didn't want to reveal too much. Not yet. I travel a lot. I've learned to survive wherever I go." Her tone was calm, but Jace could sense there was more behind her words. Hours passed, and the sun moved higher, though still hidden behind clouds. They had repaired most of the damage, and the cattle were calmer, grazing carefully. Jace noticed how Elara observed not just the animals but the land itself, the frozen streams, the way the snow drifted against the hills, the shadows that might hide danger. "You're careful," Jace said, breaking the silence. "Not many people notice those things." Elara smiled faintly. "Experience teaches you to pay attention. The land can kill you if you ignore it." Jace laughed softly. "You speak like someone who's lived here for years." yet you only just arrived." Elara didn't answer immediately. She looked at the horizon as if weighing whether to reveal her thoughts. "I've been where survival matters more than anything. I've learned from it." They continued working together, feeding and herding the cattle, repairing equipment and discussing strategy for keeping the herd safe during the winter storms. Jace realized he was learning from her, too. She suggested subtle improvements to the pens, ways to conserve feed, and ways to use the terrain to protect the animals. By afternoon, they paused near the cabin, taking a break. Jace handed Elara another cup of steaming tea, and she accepted it gratefully. "You're impressive," he admitted quietly. "Not just with the animals, but with thinking ahead. Most people my age wouldn't notice all the details you did." Elara's eyes met his.
You notice details too. Most people wouldn't see what I saw about your herd, but you do.
"That matters." Jace felt a strange warmth. He had spent years alone, trusting only himself, yet here was someone who matched his instincts and respected them. The wind shifted, bringing a faint metallic hum from the hills. Jace froze, listening carefully. "Did you hear that?" Elara nodded. "Something is out there. Not natural." Jace's heart quickened. Frontier life taught him to read the land, the wind, the skies. That hum was the sound of machines, mechanized vehicles moving across the snow. And there were tracks, freshly made, leading down toward the valley. "They're moving fast," he muttered. "Probably scouting, maybe looking for trouble." Alara's eyes narrowed. "We need to be ready. If they're hunting for something, or someone, they might find us first." Jace looked at her. He moved through the pens, checking the cattle once more, while Elara walked beside him. "Elara?" Jace said, squinting at the horizon. "You still haven't told me why someone would be tracking you. That drone last night, that was no accident." Elara paused, her eyes scanning the distant hills. "They're looking for me. That much is clear. Who they are, I can't say yet. But their intentions are not friendly." Jace frowned. "Not friendly? Out here? Who would care about one small ranch?" Elara's gaze hardened. "It's not just one ranch. It's about territory, power, and influence. There are people who want control, and I am in their way." Jace looked at her carefully. He had saved her life in the storm, and now it was clear that she was far more important than he had realized. Yet he also felt a strange thrill. Out here, on these harsh plains, danger was nothing new. But this threat was different. As they walked toward the edge of the pasture, a series of tracks caught Jace's attention. Tire marks pressed into the snow, large and mechanical, with deep grooves indicating heavy vehicles. They led down the valley and then spread out in different directions, as if someone had been scouting the area. "Looks like trouble," Jace muttered. "They've been close, maybe just yesterday." Elara knelt, examining the tracks carefully. "Yes, and they know how to move quickly over frozen ground. These aren't simple bandits. They're organized." Jace's jaw tightened. He hated organized groups with power. They always tried to take what didn't belong to them. But he didn't expect to see one this far from the major settlements. "Who are they?" he asked again. Elara shook her head. "I'll tell you soon. Right now, we focus on protecting the ranch." Jace nodded. "All right. Let's make sure they don't touch a single one of these cattle." For the rest of the morning, they worked together, setting up simple defenses around the ranch. Jace rigged noise traps along the perimeter, metal scraps tied to thin wire that would clang if tripped. Elara suggested placing reflective panels on the fences to confuse sensors and drones.
You think too much like a strategist,
Jace said, impressed.
Most people just react to what they see.
You plan ahead. Elara smiled faintly. Out here, planning ahead can save lives. By afternoon, the snow softened under the weak sunlight and the temperature rose just enough to allow them to move some of the weaker cattle to sheltered areas near the cabin. Jace was amazed at how quickly Elara adapted to the land. She knew exactly where to place the animals for safety, how to feed them efficiently, and how to minimize exposure to predators.
You're better at this than I expected, Jace admitted.
Most ranchers your age wouldn't manage even half of it. Elara's eyes twinkled with amusement. And you? You've survived alone in this land. I'd say you're exceptional too. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, a distant rumble echoed across the valley. Jace stiffened. That's no animal. Elara crouched low, studying the hills. Heavy machines, probably armored. They're testing the area. If we're not careful, they'll find us first. Jace's heart pounded. He had faced storms, wild animals, even rival ranchers. But this was something different. Someone with power and intent, coming to take what they wanted. All right, he said. We need a plan. If they come too close, we can't just fight them head on. Elara nodded. No. We'll use the land to our advantage. They rely on machines. Ice, cliffs, and hidden ravines can work for us. And the cattle, they can be more than just animals.
They can help. Jace stared at her, surprised. You're talking like...
Like a general? Elara smiled faintly. Sometimes you have to think like one to survive. The next few hours were a flurry of preparation. Jace and Elara moved the cattle to higher ground, guiding them along paths that avoided weak ice and hidden crevices. They reinforced fences, covered gaps, and dug small trenches to slow down machines. The duo worked in silent harmony, understanding each other's instincts without needing words. As night fell, the threat became clearer. A series of lights appeared on the distant hills, moving in formation, methodical, deliberate. Jace estimated at least a dozen vehicles, likely with armed personnel. They're coming, he whispered, tension tightening his chest. Elara studied the lights through a small telescope. Yes, and they're smart. They know how to use the terrain. But they don't know this land like we do. Jace nodded, feeling a rush of determination. He had faced storms alone. Now he would face enemies with her. Together they could protect what they cared about. The first wave of the threat moved closer, and Jace positioned himself near the ridge, ready to drive the cattle if necessary. Elara stayed close, scanning the area for weak points in the enemy formation. The approach was slow but deliberate. The machines rumbled, sending vibrations through the snow. The lights flickered, reflecting off ice, revealing their path. Jace felt a thrill, adrenaline and fear mixing, sharpening his senses. Elara whispered, "We need to use the bluff. Make them think the herd is stronger than it is." Jace understood immediately. He moved some of the stronger cattle along hidden paths, creating the illusion of numbers and movement. They used snow, rocks, and the natural curves of the land to hide the weaker cattle and protect them from discovery. The enemy paused, scanning the terrain, unaware of the traps and preparations beneath their sensors. One of their vehicles slipped slightly on ice, tipping metal against metal. But the humans inside didn't notice.
They'll be careful next time, Elara said.
But this works for now. We bought ourselves time. Jace nodded. Good work. You really know what you're doing. Elara looked at him, her expression serious. I've had to survive this way before. On my lands, I protect what's mine, even if it means outsmarting those who have more power. Jace realized she wasn't just skilled, she was experienced, tested, and clever. His admiration grew, though he still didn't know the full extent of her abilities or her status. They spent the rest of the night reinforcing their defenses, taking turns keeping watch. The snow had hardened into a slippery crust, and the plains were eerily silent except for the distant rumble of machines. Every shadow, every flicker of light made Jace's senses sharpen. By dawn, the enemy had retreated slightly, likely regrouping and reassessing. Jace and Alara checked the pens and found all the cattle safe. Their traps had worked, and the bluff had fooled the scouts. "You saved them," Jace said quietly. "Your ideas, they made a difference." Alara shook her head. "We saved them, together, and we'll need to continue working together." "This isn't over." Jace nodded. He realized she was right. Whoever was coming for her, or the land, was powerful, and this was only the beginning. As they sat by the fire later that day, Alara's tone changed, slightly more serious. "Jace, there's more you should know. I can't tell you everything yet, but I want you to understand why this is happening." Jace leaned forward. "Go on." I am responsible for a large territory, the largest ranch in this part of Terrion." "7," she admitted carefully. "My lands stretch far, and I protect many families and herds. Some people want to take it. That's why they were scouting near your ranch." Jace's eyes widened. He had thought she was just a traveler, a stranger in need of help, but she wasn't ordinary. She was powerful, influential, and responsible for more than anyone could imagine. Alara continued, "I didn't want to involve you at first, but after you saved me, I realized we can work together. You understand this land in ways even my teams don't. And your instincts are sharp." Jace felt a mix of pride and worry. "So, they're coming for you. And now, they might come for me too?" Alara nodded. "Yes, but together we can protect both your ranch and mine."
You have something they don't: experience, courage, and knowledge of the land. And I
have resources and strategy." For the first time, Jace understood the true scale of what they were facing. This was no longer just a frontier problem or a storm. They were up against a calculated, organized threat, and only their combined skills could ensure survival. The snow outside glimmered under the pale light of the setting sun. Jace and Alara looked over the plains, knowing that the enemy would return. But for now, they had a plan, a partnership, and hope. Together, they were ready for what was coming next. The winds, over Terrion. 7 were calmer than the past few days, but a tense energy hung in the air. Jace Thornton stood at the ridge near his cabin, staring out at the horizon. The snow glittered like glass in the weak sunlight, but every sparkle reminded him of danger lurking just beyond sight. "Alara," he said, turning toward her, "if they come back, we need to be ready. Not just the cattle. Us, too." Alara nodded. Her eyes scanned the plains, sharp and calculating. "I know. And today, you'll understand why I brought you into this. It's time I tell you everything." Jace raised an eyebrow. "Everything?" "Yes," she said firmly. "I am not just a traveler. I am the owner and leader of the largest ranch in this territory. My lands stretch for miles, supporting thousands of cattle and many families. What you see here is a small part, but it connects to a larger operation. People want to control my lands. They will do anything to take them. Jace blinked, taking in her words. You own all that? That's huge. And all this time I thought you were just a stranger caught in a blizzard. Elara smiled faintly. And I wanted to keep it that way until I could trust you. You've proven yourself not just in the storm, but here on your land. You think, adapt, and survive. That makes you someone I can work with. Jace felt a mix of pride and surprise. He had always lived simply, relying on skill and instinct. Now he was part of something far bigger than his small ranch. Suddenly, a distant rumble shook the ground. Both Jace and Elara turned toward the sound. Dust rose from the valley floor, and the familiar mechanical hum of heavy vehicles filled the air. The enemy had returned, larger and more organized this time.
They're coming, Elara said, her voice calm but steady. This is it.
We can't let them get close. Not to your ranch, not to mine. Jace swallowed, feeling the adrenaline pump through him. Then we fight smart. No rushing in blindly. We use what we have. The land, the cattle, everything. Elara nodded. Exactly. Follow my lead and trust your instincts. Together they moved quickly across the snowy terrain, positioning themselves in the herd strategically. Jace noticed how Elara thought not just about immediate threats, but the entire battlefield. She placed cattle in narrow passes to block vehicles, used snowdrifts as barriers, and set simple traps that would slow down or confuse the enemy. You're brilliant at this, Jace admitted, adjusting a fence panel. I didn't know ranching could be...
Elara chuckled softly. Ranching teaches patience, observation, and timing. Those are the same skills needed for defense and strategy.
The enemy advanced cautiously, unaware of the clever obstacles in their path. A few machines slid slightly on ice, giving Jace and Elara the opportunity to herd cattle toward the bluff, creating a stampede that forced the enemies to divert and slow down. The sound of thundering hooves echoed across the plains, a natural weapon against technology. Look at that, Jay shouted, watching the herd move as planned. You've turned them into an army, Elara nodded. Not an army, nature. We use what's real, what they underestimate. The clash continued through the day. Jace and Elara coordinated seamlessly, moving quickly between tasks, observing enemy weaknesses, and adjusting their strategy. Jace realized that he had never worked with someone who understood the land and animals the way she did. She was a master strategist, yet humble and practical at the same time. During a brief pause, they hid behind a ridge, catching their breath. How did you survive all this? Jace asked. Your lands, your experience. You're more capable than anyone I've ever met. Elara's eyes softened for a moment. Survival is learned. I've faced storms, rivals, and threats before, but I never expected to meet someone like you. Someone who can think, adapt, and act with courage. That's rare, Jace. He felt a mix of pride and humility. Thanks, I think. But right now, we need to focus. They'll try another approach soon. As predicted, the enemy regrouped. A dozen machines advanced from a hidden ridge, attempting to flank the herd. Elara signaled to Jace. Together, they moved the animals along concealed paths, forcing the enemy into narrow, treacherous terrain. One vehicle skidded dangerously on ice, giving them an advantage. Elara's strategic mind worked like a chess game, predicting each enemy move. Jace's instincts complemented her calculations, reacting quickly to immediate threats, herding cattle, and guiding the smaller animals to safety. The battle raged for hours, and it became clear that the enemy had underestimated the power of human skill, courage, and adaptability. Machines could be strong, but they were predictable. Nature, guided by knowledge and intuition, was not. Finally, as the sun began to set, the enemy retreated. Their vehicles slipped and slid on ice, some damaged by the stampeding herd and clever traps. The plains were quiet once more, except for the labored breathing of Jace, Elara, and the cattle. "We did it," Jace said, voice full of relief. Elara nodded, exhaustion and satisfaction mixing on her face. "For now, but they will return. And next time, they might be smarter." Jace looked at her. "Then we'll be smarter too. We'll adapt, just like always." Elara smiled faintly. "Yes, and now you know why I needed you. Your skills, your instincts, they are invaluable. I can't do this alone. But together we can protect our lands, our herds, and the people who depend on us." She was not just a stranger. She was a leader, capable and determined. And she had chosen to trust him, to work together as equals. That night they sat by the fire in Jace's cabin, the storm long gone, replaced by the clear, cold silence of the frontier. Elara shared stories of her ranch, the vast lands under her care, and the families and workers who relied on her. Jace listened, fascinated. He had always lived in a small world, focused on survival. But this was larger than he had imagined. "You have a lot of responsibility," he said quietly. Elara nodded.
I do, and I take it seriously.
"Every decision affects hundreds of lives. That's why I can't afford mistakes." Jace looked at her, realizing how extraordinary she truly was. "You're amazing," he said simply. Elara smiled, but her eyes were serious. "So are you, Jace. Don't forget that, out here, courage, intelligence, and loyalty are more valuable than titles or machines. You have them all." Outside, the stars sparkled over the icy plains, reflecting the calm after the storm. Inside, Jace and Elara prepared for the coming days. They knew the enemy would return, but they also knew they had the land, the animals, and each other. By dawn, Jace was walking the ridge again, watching over the plains. He felt a new sense of purpose. He had been a simple rancher, living day by day, but now he was part of something greater, a partnership that combined skill, courage, and strategy. Elara joined him, her eyes scanning the horizon.
"They'll be back," she said. Jace nodded.
"And we'll be ready." Together, they stood side by side, looking over the frozen plains, their bond strengthened by shared danger, trust, and mutual respect. The enemy might come again, but Jace realized something vital. Humans, with courage, ingenuity, and unity, could overcome even the most powerful threats. And as the sun rose over Terion, 7 casting golden light over the snow, Jace and Elara understood that the frontier was more than survival. It was a test of character, skill, and heart. Together, they were ready to face anything. For the first time, he sensed that she wasn't just a traveler or a simple stranger. There was knowledge in her eyes, a command he didn't fully understand, but he trusted her instinct. Together, they worked to fortify the pens, move the herd to safer ground, and set simple alarms, tripwires, and noisemakers to warn them of approaching vehicles. They moved quickly, quietly, yet efficiently. It was as if they had done this before, though Jace couldn't imagine how. By evening, the sun was low, casting long shadows over the snow. They returned to the cabin, exhausted but satisfied. The herd was safe, and the immediate threat seemed distant. "You're full of surprises, Elara," Jace said, sitting by the fire and rubbing his hands. She smiled faintly, warming her fingers over the flames. "And you, Jace Thornton, are wiser than most people I've met. I can see why this land works for you." They ate a simple meal, dried meat, bread, and hot tea, talking quietly about the plains, the storms, and the land. Jace was cautious, not wanting to ask too many questions about her past, but he couldn't ignore the sense that she was more than she seemed. "You've seen a lot of land, haven't you?" he asked. Elara nodded, staring into the fire. "I have. And I've learned that survival depends not just on strength, but on planning, understanding, and knowing who to trust." Jace nodded slowly. He understood. Out here, trust was rare and earned. Yet he felt he could trust her. Suddenly, a faint light flickered outside the cabin window. Jace grabbed his lantern and stepped outside, motioning for Elara to follow. Through the fading light, he saw a small drone hovering near the ridge. It was scanning the area, its sensors sweeping across the snow. "That's not good," Elara muttered. "Someone's tracking me." Jace frowned. "Tracking you? Who are they?" Elara hesitated, then shook her head. "I can't say yet. Not until I'm certain."
But they're not friendly. Jace's mind raced.
Machines, scouts, this wasn't just a frontier hazard. This was deliberate. Someone was hunting them, and they didn't know why. The drone moved on, disappearing into the distance. Jace turned to Elara. "Well, whoever they are, they won't find anything here tonight. Not while we're awake." Elara nodded. "Yes, we'll need to be careful. This land may be harsh, but it can be protected if you know how to use it." Jace looked at her, a sense of admiration growing. She wasn't just capable, she was extraordinary. Yet he still had no idea who she really was. That night, as the wind whispered over the plains and the herd slept quietly, Jace and Elara sat by the fire, planning, talking, and learning about each other. The bond between them grew, not just as strangers, but as two people who respected skill, courage, and intelligence. By the time they finally went to sleep, the sky was clear, stars glinting over the icy plains. Jace looked out the window at the vast white world beyond, thinking about how quickly life could change. One stranger in a blizzard had entered his life, and already everything felt different. Elara slept nearby, wrapped in blankets, her face calm and peaceful. But Jace knew she was not just resting. She was observing, learning, preparing. There was a reason she had survived the blizzard and the harsh journey to this remote ranch. And soon he would understand why. For now, though, the frontier was quiet. The cattle were safe, and the first day after the storm had passed, but the shadow of danger was still there, lingering on the snowy horizon. And Jace knew that this stranger, Elara Vey, was going to change his life in ways he could not yet imagine. The morning after the blizzard, the plains of Terrion, 7 were calm, but Jace Thornton knew that peace was only temporary. The snow glittered under the pale sunlight, hiding dangers beneath its frozen surface.